Well, at what point do we all just give up? Because the championship season is taking stranger and crazier twists and turns. We return today to look ahead to Matchweek 7 to preview and predict all 12 games. Of course, we'll probably get most of them wrong again, but as always, I'll encourage you to get involved down in the comments below. Let us know what you think the scores will be across all of the matches this weekend. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out in the next episode, which is on Sunday as the midweek football begins in the EFL Championship. Very quickly though, before we go and have a look back at what happened in another bonkers weekend, a quick reminder that you can pre-order FM26 if you're a video game fan now via Fanatical for 22% off Steam's price, and to help support our channel too. There's a link in the description and the eye above. But all of that basically is to detract from the fact that yet again, it was another brutal week in Matchweek 6. All of the home bankers went the wrong way. All of the favourites went and lost, basically. I mean, the Saturday 3 p.m.s were just crazy. In the end, I got 4 points, 1 on Monday night and 3 for the Friday night and early kickoffs on Saturday. But as the 3 p.m.s went, Pompey at home to Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich at home to Wrexham, Derby at home to Preston, all the strong home forms gone. Bristol City at home to Oxford on Sunday. Southampton getting battered at Hull as well. It was an unpredictable weekend to say the least. And that means, despite the fact I only got 4 points for the second week running, from 11 games this time because of the postponement or the abandonment of Blackburn Ipswich, I'm still in the top half of the overall predictors yet again because it was a tough weekend for most. Let's give those a shout out who need it though, because level with me on 4 points, Mello, Duncan and Etienne. One above us on 5 were Joe and David. On 6, quite a few of you who just picked up a couple of perfect scores along the way. Teo, Mitchell, Adam, Peter and Sven, all regular players, well done to you. One above them on 7, just creeping into the top 5 is Macca. In 4th place on 8 is Brian. In 3rd, Isaac got 9 points, 3 perfect scores, nothing else. And top of the tree, 3 perfect scores and 2 other correct outcomes. Getting 5 matches right out of this is not a bad effort. On 11 points, joint winners this week, Marco and Nigel. Supreme effort given the scorelines. Basically, it was whoever called the 1-0s right this week, largely who got the results. But with that out the way, we move on to match week 7. And we start on Friday night with a game between two sides that will fancy being in the promotion race at the end of the season, both in that mix at the moment. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Leicester City. Leicester back-to-back draws after that 2-2 Oxford with 10 men. A 0-0 at home to Coventry, which I think they'd call frustrating. In truth, they had the better chances in the match. They had more of the ascendancy, but weren't able to take them. And it's a question we asked a lot of Leicester. Who was going to score the goals for them regularly? And at the moment, it seems to be a question that still hasn't been answered. They're travelling to West Brom though, and arguably at a good time, because after a positive start for Ryan Mason, it is back-to-back defeats against Derby County and then against Middlesbrough. A late consolation in this one, and to be fair, it was a pretty even game for the most part. Middlesbrough were clinical. We've not seen many games this season where they've been outplaying an opposition, and West Brom were able to get a foothold in a game. But again, who's taking those chances at the minute? We've talked about their striker injuries and problems before. It's going to be interesting to see if they can find consistency in front of goal. So, to be honest, a decent start for both, but a similar problem. Both of them struggling to take the chances they're creating. And both of them probably looking and thinking they should have picked up more points in the last week. As a result of that, I'm going to start by sitting on the fence. I was very, very tempted by the 0-0. But I'm going to be ambitious this week. We're going to chuck a Championship's favourite scoreline in. The first of many at the Hawthorns on Friday night. I'm going for West Brom 1, Leicester City 1. As we move on to the first of 3 early kickoffs on Saturday, the side that drew with Leicester last weekend, and a battle of old tenant versus landlord. It is Coventry City versus Birmingham City. Of course, now Coventry's home ground is back in Coventry, mercifully, but they are coming into this off 3 back-to-back draws. The one against Leicester we mentioned, they clung on in there. To be honest, they didn't create much clear-cut throughout the whole match and were forced to cling on. If it hadn't been for Leicester probably not taking some good chances, they might have been in a bit of trouble. But it's showing that fighting spirit when they're not playing that well. But when people were getting very carried away early on, we did say just watch out. That 7 against QPR is not going to happen every week. And goals in the last couple of games have been a bit of a trouble. For Birmingham, a crucial win against Swansea. It's not been the most exciting start to the season in terms of results, but a 1-0 win after back-to-back defeats, albeit tough games at Stoke and Leicester, it really was important. And to do it so late on, to be able to bring someone off the bench who can take chances is great. But again, we're going through the same issue. We've talked about the lack of goal-scoring strikers in the Championship in the last year or two. 5 clear-cut chances for Birmingham, 23 shots on goal, plenty on target, and it took a 94th minute goal from Lyndon Dykes to produce. I do wonder if Pat Roberts is going to drift his way into the team because he looked creative when he came on. I think this is one of those where I'm going to throw in a cheeky away win because I know Birmingham have lost a couple of good sides this season and Coventry are certainly one of those. But we've got to start trying to predict stupidly to go with the Championship. And I just feel Birmingham on the break can expose Coventry. And if there's going to be an away win, this is one of those where I'd bank on it. So we're going to go with the form book for the whole Championship this year. Go for a Birmingham win by 2-1. As we move on to the next early kickoff and the side that Birmingham beat in stoppage time, it is Swansea City versus Millwall. A tale of 1-0s for these two last weekend. Millwall got back in form on Monday night with a 1-0 win against Watford. Obviously, I predicted 2-0, and to be honest, they didn't really create the chances for that. But it was a bit more of the old school Millwall, wasn't it? Less than 40% of the ball. And I guess to be able to then cling on and be solid defensively is something that we've been concerned they haven't done at times at home in the last few weeks. So for Alex Neil, maybe tapping into a bit of the older style just to get the team over the line. A brilliant free kick to win it. Not much else in the game. You've got to give them credit. They nicked a 1-0. For Swansea, obviously we mentioned the heartbreak at Birmingham. Had a couple of good chances themselves, but we saw Swansea get really opened up in that game. And we mentioned it the week before against Hull. It was a concern that for the first time, they were getting opened up at will. And it happened again against Birmingham. Again, they've conceded a late goal, but arguably deservedly so, given the performances. And it does leave you with a few question marks as to where they're going now. We know Millwall have been excellent on the road this season already. Swansea have been a little bit of a mixed bag, but still not the worst start in the world. And I just think based on that, it's going to be a very tight game. I know a lot of you will be going for 1-1 here based on their recent form for both sides. Both have 2-1 draws in their last 6 games. I've got a feeling Millwall might nick this. They've been formidable on the road this season. I'm going to go for them to nick a 1-0 win at Swansea, who, for the last couple of games, just given up a few too many chances. And the final early kickoff is becoming almost impossible to predict. It is Wrexham versus Derby County. Talk about Phil Parkinson being under pressure. How does he respond? By making it 4 wins in 5 in all competitions. A brilliant week for Wrexham as they won 3-2 at Norwich, despite a little grandstand finish in the Championship. But to come back from 1-0 down at half-time, Josh Windass producing some moments. And it was a brilliant game. Bonkers, end-to-end, loads of chances for both teams. Wrexham still as open defensively, but going forward, still a threat. And on those days where they can nick chances, they're going to be one hell of a handful. They then beat Reading in a cup to continue to the 4th round. Nathan Broadhead starting to look good there. Wonder if he'll be breaking through in a Championship team and making an impact very soon. But really impressive week for them after a little bit of pressure. And you've got to say, away from home, they've arguably looked the better so far this season. For Derby, much the opposite. We've talked about their home form all of last season. Well, it's letting them down now. Yes, it was an absolute rocket that lost them the game at home to Preston. However, after that, they didn't really do much to get back into the game. 2 shots on target at home to a Preston team that, look, is expected to be mid-table at best this year, albeit they're up in 5th at the minute and doing well. But Derby are either brilliant going forward and awful at the back, as we saw against, say, Coventry, or they're not able to create a great deal when they're trying to be more defensively solid. Yes, on another day that would have been a 0-0, but at home to Preston, you would expect Derby to be aggressive and to try and take chances. I do worry for them a little bit, but I've got a feeling that this is going to be a crazy game. We saw Derby away at Ipswich were brilliant on the counter. We've seen Wrexham are brilliant in front of goal, but have also got a ricket in them defensively. And at home, they've really struggled to keep the back door closed. So I'm going to go for a bonkers scoreline here to go with the rest of the Championship season. We've seen a fair few of them already this year. I'm going to go for 2 goals apiece. On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs and a side that spoilt a party last week against one that didn't get to finish their game. It's Charlton Athletic against Blackburn Rovers. You've got to feel for Blackburn because, look, they were playing brilliantly. They were a man up, a goal up against Ipswich, but I know the referee took some stick, and you're always going to get that in a situation, but there was nothing he could do. The pitch became unplayable over a 10-minute period, and it was just such a shame because it would have been a really good result for them. We'll wait to see what the outcome of that one is. For Charlton Athletic, a brilliant 1-0 win away at Sheffield United. A fabulous performance to hang in there and be defensively solid, only give up one shot on target, and then on the break, probably looked the more threatening. We saw at the end what I've been missing as a Luton fan, the James Bree delivery, some of the defenders absolutely rock solid, and to be honest, they deserved to nick it. They gave up possession, they played brilliant football on the counter-attack. It's what Nathan Jones does at his best, and that Charlton team, as we said pre-season, is going to be absolutely fine this year. Do not worry about what the bookies said about them being third favourites to go down. And for this one, I think it's going to be really tight. So I'm going to throw in the Championship's favourite scoreline again. We know Charlton don't give up too much at home. Blackburn have been more threatening on the road this year. So I'll sit on the fence with a 1-1 draw. The second early kickoff features the other side in that abandoned game. It is Ipswich Town versus Portsmouth. And despite the abandonment, we've got to start with Pompey. Home form was magnificent last year. Home form this season, while the Norwich game has been okay this season. Against Sheffield Wednesday, a 2-0 defeat out of nowhere, an absolutely rotten display for the most part, giving up a 2-goal lead against a side that haven't won this season, have barely got an 11 fit. Pompey then dominated the ball and allowed Sheffield Wednesday to sit back, which is going to be the problem for them. I know Pompey had 25 shots on goal, but the stats can be deceiving. Towards the end, it was getting a bit desperate. We were seeing long-range efforts, half chances. They weren't really opening Sheffield Wednesday up too often. And it was just a really surprising and disappointing day. I'd certainly say it was the shock of the weekend. Of course, the Banham free kick was magic, but then after that, really poor. A little unfortunate with the hamstring pull for the second goal, but still, a really terrible performance from Pompey. A day they'll want to forget quickly. For Ipswich, obviously the game was abandoned, which at the moment has saved them because they were a goal down and a man down. Certainly didn't continue that form from the Sheffield United game. And again, looked a little bit toothless, a little bit edgy. I'm starting to worry that Ipswich aren't maybe going to look the side that we expected this year. I know they've only lost one game, but struggled in front of goal at times until the last two, and defensively always seem to give up a goal when they're playing any sort of opposition. So does make this one tough. Pompey on the road have actually been a bit more solid this season, which does make it hard to call, but I just feel Ipswich have got to hit form eventually. I know I made this mistake with Luton and a couple of others last year, but I'm going to go for Ipswich to nick a home win narrowly by 2-1. Into the second half, and we go to a manager coming up against his former club. It is Oxford United versus Sheffield United. Chris Wilder, an unhappy return at home to Charlton. Sheffield United, they huffed and puffed a bit, but without really creating anything. Only one shot on target will be a huge concern. Had a lot of the ball, but didn't do much with it. And again, no matter who's in charge at the moment, defensively to the counter-attack, they look so vulnerable. And I mentioned it with some of their defensive signings, of course. I often picked out McGuinness, who'd been at Luton and I'd seen last season. But I do worry for Chris Wilder about how he's going to resolve that situation because they did look exposed as two centre-halves rather than in a back three. But we'll see what happens with that this week. In terms of Oxford, a fantastic result. One of the surprises of the weekend, a 3-1 win at Bristol City, who had started really well themselves. Not just the fact that they won that game that I think was so impressive. It was the fact that they were the better side for most of it. They didn't have a lot of the ball, but again played on the counter to great effect. Probably could have scored more. Officially, I think 4 clear-cut chances. Created bundles when they were countering. And Bristol City didn't really know what to do with them. And compared to their earlier fixtures in the season, didn't create a great deal. So Gary Rowett will be delighted to get off the mark and to produce such a performance. They have normally been so strong at home as well, though this year that's not maybe been the case quite so much, albeit it's a little 3-game unbeaten run now. Sheffield United, though, you just feel it's going to click. They've not scored in their last 5. The last goal, in fact, was the Birmingham League Cup tie that we watched on camera about a month and a half ago. It's one of those that people will probably think Sheffield United won't win now. So let's go against the form book and we might pick up some points. I'm going 2-1 to Sheffield United. Well, since we started this show, this is probably the ultimate mid-table battle until last season, where they both got embroiled in battles at both ends of the table. It is Bristol City travelling to Preston North End. Preston, a 1-0 win at Derby thanks to a wonderful goal from Alfie Devine. Again, we mentioned it before in the Derby section, not a huge amount in it, but again, they got the win, they've started well, and they'll be absolutely thrilled to be in 5th place at the moment. For Bristol City, as we just mentioned, a real shocker out of nowhere. Yes, they've not been defensively rock solid in certain recent games. And I got criticism a week ago on this show in the comments for saying that Bristol City weren't solid at the back. And I said, look, they may have only conceded 4 in 5, but they're giving up chances and it will tell eventually. And against Oxford, they gave up hatfuls and conceded 3. It was a warning sign that was coming. And unfortunately, it did that weekend. But what really surprised me is how poor they were going forward. Only 2 shots on target, only a couple of good chances against an Oxford side that's been pretty hapless defensively for most of the campaign. I do think for this game, it's got the Championship's favourite scoreline written all over it. You wouldn't bank on either side to go and dominate the game. You'd bank on both to be relatively comfortable with a point given the circumstances. So I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1 between 5th and 3rd. On to 2 sides that had a fabulous weekend last time out. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus QPR. Sheffield Wednesday looking down at their City rivals at the bottom of the table, and in their wildest dreams, I don't think they expected that before the season kicked off. Albeit they've only got 4 points, but they did pick up their first win at Pompey, a bit of Barry Bannon magic, a counter-attack with a fortuitous injury to the chasing defender. However, a really solid display, created good chances on the break, and I feel like we're talking about this more and more in the last couple of years. Lots of sides want to play out and dominate the ball, but the ones who have the counter-attacks, who have less possession, who try and hit on the break, are tending to win these away games more often. And Sheffield Wednesday did exactly that. They then defended resolutely, a really good win. And I've got to be fair, while they're still in that bottom 3, and they will go down the way things are going, they're putting up more of a fight than I expected. But we did always say, if they get ahead in a game, they've got a chance. It's when they let in 1 or 2 early, like Bristol City, you will see them just give up and become a training session and maybe save themselves for the next one. But great win, great effort, and fair play to Henrik Pedersen. He's doing his chances no harm at all. Nor is Julian Stefan. There was a lot of derision after the 7-1 against Coventry. I said it pre-season when he was appointed. I think he's a really good appointment. He's a really good coach, and it will just take a little bit of time. It's now 3 wins in succession, all in the Championship. After 2 3-1 wins and lots of good attacking play, we saw a slightly different side of the game against Stoke City. A gritty defensive effort, only conceded 1 shot on target. Again, even at home, weren't afraid to give up the ball, only had 35% of it, but created loads on the counter, had the best chances of the match. Probably should have scored 2 or 3 in truth, but a really good win. And with Richard Kone now starting to look like a consistent threat, I think QPR are in really good nick. As a result, I'm going to go for them to win this game. For Sheffield Wednesday, producing performances like that back-to-back are going to be hard. Might actually be a little bit easier away from home for them in the short term. But QPR have made it 3 in a row, and I'm going to bank on 4. I think they're looking really good at the minute. I'm going to go for them to win this one by 2-0 with a Richard Kone goal as part of it. 3 to go, and we move on to 2 sides that have had very different starts. It is Southampton against table toppers Middlesbrough. Borough 4 points clear at the top after picking up 16 from 18. Still unbeaten, one of only 2 sides in the division to do that. A really decent performance for them against West Brom. Obviously didn't dominate the game, as we mentioned, but they took their chances, and defensively, they've been okay. They've sort of battled to victories, and while they've not produced performances that make me think, oh, they're going to go on and dominate and get promotion, you can only pick up the points against the teams you're playing. And to be honest, West Brom are side expected to be in the playoff mix. They've gone away to Norwich and won already. Sheffield United, yes, in a bit of a mess, but they're picking up good results. 3-0 at Millwall, in a game where they could have been behind at half-time. It's still not totally convincing, but really good results against some good opposition. Rob Edwards has to get credit for it. For Southampton, a pretty rotten week. They actually played really well at Liverpool in the Cup, and maybe makes you question the team selections from Will Still, because there were a couple of surprise omissions last Saturday that have come in midweek and then done really well, and I wonder if they'll stay in, particularly looking at someone like Adam Armstrong, who made an impact and even scored the goal when he came on last Saturday too. Flynn Downs, I still think there's a place for in that 11 as well, but either way, for Southampton, a really worrying week. Against Hull, they were absolutely rotten. They're defending from set pieces and wide balls, as we talk about with so many teams, really poor. Again, had more than 70% of the ball, did pretty much nothing with it. And after back-to-back losses in League and Cup, 4 without a victory in all competitions, Southampton are now looking down rather than up at the moment, albeit it's very early days. So it's important they try and bounce back in this one and get some form of result against an informed team, just to show a little bit of encouragement to the fans. I'm not sure they're going to win this game, because I still think they're too susceptible at the back. To counter-attacks, they look really, really vulnerable against any level of opposition. They don't defend crosses brilliantly, so I have to give Borough a goal. And as a result, for the fourth time in the first 10 games, I'm going for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1 apiece. Our penultimate game sees us go to the other side in the automatic promotion places. It is Stoke City versus Norwich City. Stoke now 3 defeats in 4 in all competitions after a 1-0 defeat at QPR, where they didn't have much to cheer about, as we mentioned a moment ago. Absolutely battered in terms of chances, had loads of the ball, did nothing with it, and then looked really vulnerable to the counter-attacks. They were outdone tactically, which, to be honest, they've done to a few teams this season in reverse, but it's just the teams dominating possession. It's not seeming to go well at the moment, especially when they've not got those creative players to unlock the door. So maybe a little bit more of a reality check for Stoke in the last couple of weeks, but still a decent start under Mark Robins, and defensively are looking far more impressive than in recent seasons for the most part. A team that hasn't looked impressive defensively recently is Norwich City. A 3-2 defeat at home to Wrexham. A crazy game. At 1-0 up and pretty much comfortable at half-time. It looked like it was going to be a nice day at the office, but I don't know whether it was complacency. I don't know whether it was a change from Wrexham, but the second half just turned into a crazy pinball game. They did produce 2 decent performances on the road prior to that, though. Looked good at Blackburn and got a solid point at Coventry despite conceding late. So it makes this one very difficult for me, but I just think Norwich are going to be more aggressive. It will allow Stoke to hit on the counter. It will allow them to play to their natural strengths. I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory for Stoke City. I think they'll nick this game and stay in the top 2. And the final game between two sides who again had very different weekends. It is Watford versus Hull City. Already I see a few question marks of the Watford manager. Level on points with the relegation zone. No winning 4 and back-to-back 1-0 defeats. This time away at Millwall where, let's be fair, it was a nothing game. They conceded a stunning free kick. And then neither side really did enough to score after that. So it wasn't like they were absolutely outplayed. But there are alarming signs for them, aren't there? After losing at home to Blackburn as well, you just start to think, right, where's the quality? Because they're not producing many shots on target. They're not producing many clear efforts at all. They don't really look like scoring a lot of the time, other than against a very poor defensive Southampton team. For Hull City, they do look like scoring. You've got to give them credit. And maybe this is exactly what the owner wanted, because they're mid-table, but they're one of the top scorers in the division and one of the worst defences. A brilliant win against Southampton. Some of the defending was atrocious, but Hull City took advantage, got a really good victory. You've got to give them credit. They're picking up some good results there. A late equaliser against Swansea, where again, they were very creative, looked like scoring. The problem is they've got to find a way to sort out the mess at the other end, because they're still conceding goals for fun. Was the first game in 6 where they hadn't conceded 2 or more, so there is that positive to it as well. However, it's definitely the Achilles heel for them at the moment. But this is sort of what the owner wanted, wasn't it? End-to-end football, excitement, and maybe the results aren't quite as important as long as you're doing okay. And at the moment, Hull City are producing that. I'm not sure this one's going to be as exciting though, because Watford are a team that are going to be desperate for a result. I would expect the manager to be a bit more cautious in considering that, to try and make sure that they aren't outdone. And I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline, and for the 5th and final time this match week, a 1-1 draw between Watford and Hull to finish us off. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. I've not gone for any team to score more than 2, but I have gone for a thrilling 2-2 draw between Wrexham and Derby County. I've also gone for away wins with 2 goals for QPR, for Sheffield United for their first points this season, and for Birmingham City to inflict Coventry's first of the year. Middlesbrough will continue their unbeaten run as one of 5 Championship's favourite scorelines I've gone for. The 1-1 draw, better return this weekend. Can we have some normality back in the EFL Championship? Do you agree or disagree with my score predictions though? Let us know in the comments below. Give us yours for this weekend, and if you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out when we return on Sunday to look ahead to our first full midweek edition of Championship fixtures this season. If you enjoyed this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on to make sure you don't miss a thing. Thank you very much for watching though. Have a good weekend all, and we'll see you again on Sunday to look ahead to Match Week 8, our first midweek fixture list.